Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Labor Day service weekend. Hey, this has always been considered the traditional last holiday of the summer season before the school schedules, and it was a place to go to the coast or to the mountains or somewhere. So I know you could be somewhere else, and so all of you who are joining us, welcome. Those online, welcome as well. Glad that you're with us this morning. I'm delighted to be here with you. I hope this next 30 minutes or so proves to be a helpful time for you. It's kind of I'll tell you, I'll just warn you right now, it's a different kind of sermon than I've ever preached before, ever. And at the end of it, you may say, good, it's done. One and done is good. We'll see. But we're going to talk about relational roles this morning. And I hope the topic is as helpful for you as it's been for me. You know, as an introvert, relationships as a teenager often posed sort of a mystery to me as to how they operate and how you interact within them, whether it be with the guys or with my girlfriend or other members of the opposite sex. And so as an adult, growing up, married, I realized that I wasn't alone in that respect. There's many, many people who struggle in relationship, who have a problem with it, to try to resolve the mystery. And years ago, in terms of trying to understand us as people and how we function and how successful we'll be in the workforce, some smart people came up with a test, a standard, a guide. They call it IQ. You've all heard of that. IQ, intelligent quotient. It is a measure of a person's reasoning ability to use information and logic to answer questions, make predictions about outcomes in life, and so forth. And you know, that was the industrial educational standard, gold standard for years. If you had a IQ of 130 plus, well, then you were one of life's winners. If you were 165, that's like genius level. And so that's the way it was for many years. But later, it was seen that this was insufficient, what your IQ was, for either predicting job success. There were some very smart people who didn't do well in the job force, or, in fact, an indication of personal well-being. And that's because, as time went on, people, even the secular world, recognized that smart people don't always get along or play nice. That relationship is more than simply head knowledge and understanding reasoning ability. It also, relationships require heart understanding. So much later along the way, some smart people developed a second gauge, and they called it EQ, emotional quotient. And that's the ability to manage your emotions in a positive way so you're able to communicate effectively, and you were able to empathize with others, which was sort of a Achilles heel in the first one. Smart people are not always sensitive. And in doing that, overcome challenges and diffuse relational conflict. That was the measure of trying to understand that. Now, obviously, healthy relationships require emotionally healthy, mature people. But again, as the years go by, and despite thousands upon thousands of self-help books for relational health, published, printed, written, so forth, in spite of that, the relationships still remain a mystery for many, many people. And so people who work together in the workforce, as well as people who live together under one roof as husband, wife, as family, they still struggle with a mystery of conflict and misunderstanding. And I got an example of this early on as a kid growing up. When I was 8 years old, my family moved from a little neighborhood in South San Gabriel, LA area, up to Fountain, Nevada, out in the desert, because my dad wanted to be a farmer, and he had a chance to buy this piece of desert, which we spent 30 years turning into a farm. By the time I was 16, we were making progress in that regard, and my dad and his nephew, my cousin, had begun raising produce and selling it. So we raised heart of gold cantaloupes, which was famous in that region, well known, watermelon, sweet corn, tomatoes, cucumbers, the whole thing. When I turned 16, I had the opportunity to go with my dad. I would take a truck. I would have a driver's license, so I would drive a truckload of watermelon, about 3 ton or so. And I would follow him in his pickup, loaded the gills with cantaloupe in crates, and we'd go up to all the stores in Reno, grocery stores, and we'd go to the back, and he'd talk to produce managers, and I would be his shadow with him. Didn't do any talking, but I'd be there. And he got to know these people, and he would always do the same thing. He'd initially, as he met people, these guys, he would give them some free things. Hey, Bill, here's some cantaloupes for you and the wife. Here's a watermelon. Here's a this, here's a that. The idea that he was going to become friends with them and they would buy his stuff. And they did, to a point. Eventually, we would go up there with our load of stuff, and the guy would say, hey, Workman, sorry, the district manager, he'd always put it somewhere, he bought a bunch of those California melons, which were never as good as ours. And we got them, and so I can't buy yours this week, or I'm going to take a crate. Whenever that would happen, and it would happen frequently, my dad, as we'd walk out of the store, he would be upset. He would be, not just because he didn't sell the melons, but he always felt betrayed. Like his friend his friend should have bought, he gave him stuff, his friend should have bought his stuff regardless. For me, that was sort of a confusing thing. I didn't quite understand why he felt that way or what was going on, but again, I was trying to figure it out myself. And I sort of remained confused for the next 30 years, How does this all work? Until now, I'm in my 40s. I'm here as a pastor at this church. And I take some staff and some folks in the church out to a leadership church conference in Chicago. And I go to this seminar given by the new associate of this mega church on this one obscure Bible verse to explain not IQ or EQ, but what I'm going to call is RQ, relational quotient. What is it? Well, this is my word. You won't find this anywhere, so don't look for it on Google. You won't find it. This is Dave's word here. An understanding of the relational role dynamics that we have. And I got to tell you, as I sat there for that hour that afternoon, all the lights came on. And I thought to myself, oh, now I get what happened 30 years ago with my dad and why relationships still, for all of us to some degree, confuses us and frustrates us. And this was the verse we looked at, Philippians 2:25. But I thought it necessary to send to you Epaphroditus, my brother, fellow worker, and fellow soldier, who is also your messenger and minister to my need. Now, folks, I'll just tell you, this is a kind of verse that we just roll right past, right? We look at it as incidental, like it's sort of in the way, let's get by it, to get to the good doctrinal stuff, to the real serious teaching and the commands and all those things in the Bible that we read the Bible for. But the truth is, Paul, in identifying Epaphroditus in these 3 ways and the 3 relational roles that he has given us great insight as to how relationships work and why sometimes they don't work so well. He gives us insight on an aspect of relational life that we seldom really understand intuitively. And so consequently, that becomes a source of both confusion and frustration to us. So what I'm going to do over the next 30 minutes or so is I'm going to share some relational insights that I was given 25 plus years ago and sort of break it down for you so you better understand how this all works in real life. And then I will also give you some application visual examples to help you see this in your own mind. But when Paul identified his friend Epaphroditus as a friend, worker, and soldier, he was identifying 3 different relational roles that he had with this man, that Epaphroditus, had with Paul and the rest of the team, and that in the larger perspective, we all have with each other. He was in 3 different relational circles, and you see we've got a lot to fill in on our outline this morning, more than normal, so you got to stay with me. Let's look at it. In these 3 relational circles, The brother circle is a community circle. He's a brother. He's a community. He's part of a community. The fellow worker is a corporate circle. We'll talk more about that as we go along. And as a soldier, he's in the cause circle. Now, what I need to tell you is, before we get in deep, and we're going to dive pretty deep this morning, is that our relational circles, or roles, if you prefer that word, are constant. That is to say, we are, each one of us, always in these three circles with the people in our life, the people we encounter. In our lives, every minute of our lives. We are never not in these three circles. But as we're also going to see this morning, these three circles are not static. They are dynamic, which means they are always changing in relative size, value, influence, and importance to us in the moment. But we're always in these three circles. The moment you forget or you remain ignorant of what circle you are in as you interact with someone in your life, be it someone close at hand or someone you're just meeting, the moment you forget that, that's the moment relational confusion, hurt, and frustration begin, either in you or in the person you are interacting with. These three circles, community, corporate, cause, are identified in this way because of the personal focus they have within each one of these relational circles. Let's focus on that. In the community circle, it's all about people. That makes sense, right? It's a people circle. In the corporate circle, it's all about procedure. Or you could say process if that makes it easier to understand for you. It's all about process. And in the cause circle, what drives it is passion. That's what it's about. So let's visualize what I'm talking about. You see that on your outline. There are these three circles. You can fill them in. You've got community there at the top. That's people. Corporate on the left, procedure or process. And on the right, it's about the cause circle or about the passion that drives us in those places. Now, I want you to look at those overlapping areas. Each circle overlaps with each other, and they overlap together in the center. Now, what you need to understand is those overlapping areas, relationally, are where relational life happens or collides, depending on our cue, our understanding of the role. And again, this picture is just for illustrative purposes only. It's not how it appears in real life situations, which I'll give you some in a few moments, in which they're all equal. Rarely they all equal, rarely. The size and importance of these three relational circles is rarely equal, which is why and where conflict occurs. Now, another way to visualize these circles is by a practical metaphor. See it in your outline. The community circle is all about family, people, family circle. The fellow worker corporate circle is about business. That's how we would think of it. While the fellow soldier is about military, or we could include athletics probably in that one. But maybe we better relate to these common ideas of family and business and military. And some of you ladies who are here this morning may be thinking to yourself, well, Dave, you know, I'm a stay-at-home housewife, or I'm a stay-at-home mom, so I'm not in either the corporate or cause circle. Well, I would beg to differ with you. I believe that every day of our lives, each one of us here is making community-based decisions, making corporate-based value decisions, and making cause-based value decisions. Why? Because we are all together in sharing three similar, same core values that are within these specific circles. So in the community circle, the core value is love. If love's not present, that circle breaks down. In the corporate circle, though, it's not so much about love, it's about efficiency. And we'll talk about why that's important in a moment. It's about efficiency. And finally, in the cause circle, it is about courage. That's what drives the circle. Whether you're in the military, in which it requires courage to follow your lieutenant into battle, or you're, for instance, in a football game, and you're looking across the line of scrimmage, and when the quarterback says hike, you better ready to do battle because that guy is coming over you if you don't step up with courage. That's how it works in these circles. So these core values exist to both sustain and maintain within each circle a specific relational circle and role. And they do that by focusing their core value on one key person within that circle. So within the family or community circle, the key person is the weakest person. It's the weakest person. Let me give you an example of that. Two people meet, they see each other from a distance, they start to grow together, they begin to date, they fall in love, and they decide to get married. One flesh, boom. They are in this relationship, community circle. They are focusing on them. It's wonderful. It's one big honeymoon. They're doing everything together. They're spontaneous. It's wonderful. And then they decide, hey, let's have a baby. And they do. What happens? Oh, now they're focused on the weakest member of the family. They're raising the baby. They're focused there. They've changed circles. Maybe they don't realize that, but they have. And they do this for 18. Maybe they have another one or two. And they do this for 18 or 20 years. Not this so much, this. And then guess what happens? The babies grow up and leave. And they say, oh, who are you? I'm not sure I know you or like you anymore. Because they didn't maintain the community circle so much as they were focused on the cause circle. And sometimes that circle doesn't maintain. In the business circle, though, the focus isn't on the weakest, it's on the most productive. The person who gets the job done, that's the person who gets the raises, the promotion. That's where the focus is because that's what it requires in that circle. And so in the military circle, it's all about the most committed. Who's going to take the hill when the lieutenant says charge, when the quarterback says hike. That's the most committed. So understand that God has created each one of us here, wired us for all three circles. You have been equipped to function in all three. But, again, it's important to realize which circle you are in at any given time so that you're not surprised by what is required in that circle relationally. See, the means to success are different in each circle. And I think when we confuse core values or we confuse or are ignorant of the means to success in each circle, that's where the source of relational hurt and anger occur. So, within the community circle, the means to success, with the love being the value, it's all about harmony. If you don't get along, that circle breaks down. It's about harmony. But that's not the case in the corporate business circle. It's all about control. Why? Well, the goal of that circle is to maintain reproducible systems. So that when the car rolls off the line in Detroit or the hamburger goes across the counter at In-N-Out or wherever you get your hamburgers at, the consumer needs to know that is exactly like it was a week ago or a year ago. They can trust the product. How do you do that? You control reproducible systems. That's how it gets done. What happens when a 10-year-old boy says, Mom, I don't like the way you made my peanut butter sandwich? Breakdown in system. She was in a hurry. Something happened different. Product isn't likable. It happens. It's part of our life. Whereas in the military or the cause circle, it's about risk. Playing it safe won't win the war. It won't win the game. You've got to risk it all. You've got to be all in or get out of the game. That's how it's played. So we have to stop and ask ourselves, well, why does anyone actually sign up to be in these circles or stay in these circles? And the reason is each circle has its own personal reward. In the family circle, the reward is security or safety. You come home, you're in your castle, there's a family there that makes you feel good and accepts you, and you stay there, not because everybody gets along all the time, but generally speaking, you feel safe, you feel secure there. But in the business circle, or the corporate circle, it's not about that. I mean, you want a job that doesn't, quit on you, but the goal is to get paid. You want money. That's why you stay there. Without that circle goes away because money gives you success. The more you make, the more money you get, the more stuff you have, and there's a sense of success of that. But in the cause circle, the military circle, security and money aren't the game. It's all about the glory. It's about the reward. It's about the significance of winning the battle, winning the cause, whatever the cause is. And that changes because of what you might be in. So let's take a few minutes and see how these circles might play out in real life situations, okay? So remember the story I told you about my dad and the produce manager, and we asked the question, why was Dad frustrated? What was that all about? Well, let's look at his circle. When he was going into that produce manager to talk to him, he was stepping large into the community circle when he gave him those melons, when he gave him the free watermelon, when he did all that stuff. He was trying to enlarge his community circle with that guy. Why? Because of the cause. He was trying to sell produce. That's what he was doing. He had a very small relation or corporate circle with this guy. I mean, he barely knew him. He didn't work with him or for him. That was small. He was large in the community and the cause circle, and that's where he was. But where was the manager's perspective? Where was he coming from? Well, the manager was in a wholly different place. He was in a place to buy from my dad. He was in the corporate circle big time. He hardly knew my dad. His community circle with my dad was very small. And his cause was a lot bigger than simply buying some seasonal local melons. I mean, he had hundreds of products, hundreds of vendors, 52 weeks a year that he was responsible. So he was strictly business. He was in the corporate circle. It was about profit. If he could buy cheaper melons and have better bottom line profit to show his store manager, it wasn't personal. It was just a no-brainer. I mean, he still liked my dad the same after as before. He's just not buying from him because his community circle is so much smaller than what my dad was trying to create for him. Here's another scenario. Imagine husband and wife. They've been married 5-10 years. Wife says, honey, let's go out to dinner Friday night and make a weekend of it. He says, great, where do you want to go? She says, how about Red Lobster? She says, okay. So they go out, leave the kids with a setter, and they're sitting there, and they're having a wonderful evening. And during the course of the evening, the wife says to the husband, honey, I was talking to my mother this week on the phone and about my younger brother, Bobby, and he just can't seem to get a job. And Mom, we were kind of wondering if you and your business would give my brother a job. Where is she at? Well, she's in a big-time community circle. And she is with her husband having a great evening, but she's got this secondary thing. She's in the corporate circle asking him to give her little brother a job. Now, the cause is the smallest because she doesn't really care where he works, just so he works. Well, that's great, but where is the husband? Well, prior to that question, he was in the community circle with his wife. But that quick, when he was asked that question in that setting, and the alarm started going off in the back of his mind, he's in the corporate circle. He's being asked to be a hiring boss of this kid, this young man. And the cause, he's thinking, is the next largest because he's thinking, what would I hire him to do? And in the community circle, I mean, that's shrunk now. He doesn't really like his brother-in-law. It's like, so here's what's going to happen. How he responds, the husband, is going to determine the level of harmony in their community circle for that night for sure. And maybe for the whole next week. If he stops and considers how important the community circle is for his wife, who's asking for her mom and brother, then he might make his community circle second biggest. I mean, maybe almost as big. And he would say something like, honey, that would be so wonderful if my business could do that. But we just simply don't have any margin right now to hire anyone. But things are always changing. So why don't you ask me again in 6 months and we'll talk more? If he says something like that, he may have dodged the bullet. Because he's not turned her down, he's left the door open, but he's given her a kind perspective of here's where we're at, But you see, he's in a challenging place because he's been a part of that family for 5 or 10 years, being married to her, and he knows his brother-in-law. So if out of simply that corporate circle or one of the circles, he just says, honey, your brother hasn't kept a job more than 6 months the whole time I've known him. He's a loser. I'm not hiring him. Boop. Done for the weekend. Done for the rest of the week. Okay, you say, that's a little too drastic. I don't have a job that I'm hiring anybody. Okay, too unique. Here, how about this one? Husband comes home after a long day at work to a wife who has had equally long day caring for their sick 2-year-old. Okay? Where's he at? He comes home, the corporate circle is still filling his mind. At 4:10, the boss called him in his office and read him out for not doing something. He's like processing that big time. The community circle is big for him. He's hardly wait to get home. He wants to feel safe in his home with his wife and so forth. But that cause circle, the raising the child circle, that's out of his mind. That's the smallest place in his mind. He hasn't been taking care of the kid all day. He's been doing work. So it's off his radar, but not his wife's. Where's she at? Well, she is in a whole different place. Her goal right now, her very great desire, is to have a serious adult conversation with her husband and tell him about her day with a sick 2-year-old in the cause circle. She doesn't know what happened at 4:10 that afternoon. That's off her radar, her corporate circle is small. And what she's hoping would happen in that conversation is her husband recognizing where she's at to say, honey, you've obviously had the harder day than I have, and I'm so proud of you for what you did. Thanks for doing this. Someday we'll look back on this, and you'll be glad you had this opportunity, blah, blah, blah. And, okay, that was good. Now, you could see, though, where this evening could easily go if each person, unaware which circle they're in or the other person's in, speaks from their own dominant circle in that moment. Again, it could be a very frosty evening with a lot of unintentional, misunderstood feelings because where they were just coming from, but not really knowing where the other person was or really being ignorant of it. Let me give you another illustration. Let's talk about me right now preaching. Right now, I'm preaching. Here's my circle. I have a great big corporate responsibility. I'm doing this. Cause is right there, but I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that I'm, here as a pastor, I wouldn't be in the corporate circle. Cause is big. I'm using the scripture. It'll be somewhere in a moment. My community circle, though, is very small with you, in the sense that many of you haven't even met, don't know. Others I know on a first-name basis. But it's pretty small. What does that mean? Well, at this moment, my corporate cause role and responsibility are dominant. They are all-consuming, which means it would require a life-threatening emergency in my family for me to stop at this moment and leave. Someone would have to come to the door and say, hey, Dave, your wife, your so-and-so is just been rushed to in-law hospital. You need to leave right now and go there. And believe me, I'd say, Brian, Ed, close in prayer, I'm gone. Boom. That'd be it. But in a short while, I'm going to be home with my wife, Louise. Where is she going to be? Well, she's in a community circle. We're going to have lunch together as husband and wife. the corporate circle is going to shrink even smaller than it's represented on the screen. I don't know corporate responsibilities with her in that regard. Believe me, I'm not going to re-preach this sermon to her. Honey, I got this 30 minutes I'd like to share with you before we eat. No. We're not going to rediscuss the finer points of my third point and why we could have changed the circles. No. No, I'm going to be there as Dave, not Pastor Dave, not Reverend Workman. I'm going to be there. And if I don't step into that circle, if I don't understand that and leave that corporate, hey, I did it and I'm done, but now that's done for now. If I don't understand that, then that lunch won't go well. And that happens all the time with people because they don't understand where they're stepping into and where they've been. And they don't take the moment to think about that and change. Let me give you a different one. Dad agrees to pay son an allowance for 3 things. Taking out the garbage without being asked, keeping his room clean, and helping mom put back the dishes from the dishwasher. At the end of the week, he's taken out the garbage. A couple times he had to be asked. The room has never got clean. It's messy. And he helped mom with the dishes, but a couple times she gave in with his complaining and did it on her own. At the end of the week, though, Dad's sitting in his chair, and he shows up with his hand out to be paid. Want my allowance. Where's Dad at? Well, Dad is sort of in all 3 circles. He loves his son, so he's in the community circle with his son. That's why he's going to pay him out of his love. He's going to pay him. He's in the corporate circle with his son. But, the cause circle is bigger than you might think because for him, it really isn't about giving his son a job. It's about building his son's character. He's 11 years old, but it's time to get with the program. And he is preparing his son for a real life and a real world where if you no work, no pay. If you do that very long, no job. That's how it works. But where's the son's expectations? Well, he doesn't understand those last 2, corporate. He's just a kid. He doesn't understand the cause, what Dad's trying to teach him a lesson and help grow character, which is not going to be done with 1 week, obviously, but he's squarely as the son in the community circle. He's there, and he knows that Dad promised to pay him, and now it's time to pay up. Again, a great teaching moment or not. If Dad can remember all 3 roles that he's in and respond accordingly from all 3 circles, then a hard lesson could be learned. Son, I'm going to pay you for this, but this you didn't do, and next week you could do better, and they could have this conversation. But if he allows one of those circles to dominate the cause of the corporate, then if it's dominating his thoughts and words, what's probably going to happen is he's going to provoke his son to anger in those words. Much of what Pastor Daniel shared a few weeks back in Ephesians 6:4. See, often the difference between relational harmony and relational hurt is our level of RQ, to use my phrase. Do we really know which relational circle we are speaking out of in that moment? And do we know, are we clear on which relational circle we are speaking to that person in, where they're at? And again, we could come up with some more family life examples. You can now do some of your own and draw the circles. But let me change gears a little bit here. Let's change our focus from the earthly to the eternal. And let's consider the big picture of why God has left us, all of us here, in the 21st century in the good U.S. of A. I know that for all of us, our natural tendency is to just assume that life, my life, is all about me and right now. So I want to be happy, and it's your job to make me happy. We are culturally conditioned to think that way. Our flesh agrees with that assessment. But what was it that Jesus said toward the end of his ministry to his men about, I am with you to the end of the age? To what purpose? In Acts 1, he said, I want you to be my witnesses. Start here in Jerusalem with people who are like you, know you. Move into Judea with people who are sort of like you. And then go to Samaria with people who aren't like you so much. And ultimately go to the ends of the world to people who aren't like you at all. Be my witnesses. Share and tell people about what you know about me and what I've done and why I came. So does this lesson have anything at all to say about our eternal assignment? And I think it does. We just finished the book of Ephesians. In a parallel book, Colossians, Paul mentions a second time these same three relational roles. But again, within the context of being Jesus' messenger or witness. In Colossians 4, 5, and 6, he says this, conduct yourselves with wisdom toward outsiders, meaning people outside the church, people who don't know the Lord, making the most of the opportunity. In Ephesians, he adds, because the days are evil. Let your speech always be with grace, as though seasoned with salt. Why should we be worried about this? So that, here's the purpose, the result, so that you will know, head, heart knowledge, how you should respond to each individual person that you encounter in their individual relational circles. Brian, in finishing in Ephesians 6, 5-9 here a couple weeks ago, talked about the fact that this wisdom that Paul is talking about involves authentic Christ-like living. And that's how we live wisely. We live by God's law, by God's his plan for our lives. Well, the reason we do that is because the days are evil. That is to say, our time is short. It's finite. So we need to leverage our finite time opportunities for other people's eternal gain, which is exactly what Jesus did, right? 33 years on earth, 3-year ministry. He leveraged his opportunity, his finite time opportunities for their eternal gain, for ours. So in that message, he talked about, out of wise hearts flow grace-filled words. Not words filled with prejudice and pride and bitterness and bias and, all the stuff that the flesh produces. No, out of wise hearts flow grace-filled words seasoned with gospel salt that help folks thirst for the living water of Jesus. But Paul's last statement, so that you will know how you should respond to each person, that is often the puzzling aspect of being a witness, isn't it? How to respond. Well, I find it interesting that Paul follows these two commands up with another, you might say, incidental comment about his team in verse 7. He says, as to all my affairs, Tychicus, our beloved brother, faithful servant, and fellow bondservant in the Lord, will bring you information. He'll be a messenger. He will be a witness. Like Epaphroditus in Philippians 2, Paul gives Tychicus these same three relational roles. In the community circle, he's a beloved brother. In the corporate circle, he's a faithful servant. And in the cause circle, he's the bond servant in the Lord. Now, while both men live in these same relational circles and roles to fulfill, notice both men are mentioned in Scripture by Paul as true speakers, as being messengers, as witnesses. In fact, Epaphroditus is called your messenger and minister. Now, maybe I'm reading too much into this biblical coincidence, but I wonder if we really understand the relational dynamic when we are thinking about sharing Christ with a friend. Let's look at this. One more slide. Here we are. We have a community relationship with our friend. Not much of a corporate one, unless, of course, we're co-workers. Then it might be a little bigger. But we're getting ready to, with our friends, step into the cause circle and share a gospel salty word, a testimony, something biblically, whatever it is. But where's our friend? Well, our friend is in a whole different place. She has a big community circle with us. That's why we know each other. Corporate, maybe not, but the cause in his or her mind is almost non-existent. That's why you're sharing the gospel. So what we need to remember is that while we are motivated by the cause circle of the gospel, the relational link we have with our friend is mostly in the community circle. It was Sir Francis of Assisi who said, preach the gospel at all times, when necessary, use words. We are preaching the gospel. Let's put that back up for a second. We are preaching the gospel when we're in the community circle with our friend, but this is a cause circle that requires us to use words. But what we need to understand is we need to make certain our words are also community motivated and sensitized. Why? Well, if your words are coming from the community circle with what you share with them, as much as the cause circle that you want to share with them, they may hear. But if you don't keep that in mind and you speak simply from the cause circle, unaware where they're at or not caring where they're at, your witness, though well-intentioned, will be seen as mere religious sales pitch and be rejected, which is the farthest thing from our mind to be perceived that way and to care about it that way. Which leads me to share one final example, which is your take-home test. Here on the bottom of your outline, you see those three circles unfilled in. Maybe the most important lesson you can take home with you from this, what I've shared, is a better or a new understanding of yourself. And if you understand yourself, then your spouse and your family as well. Here's the question. What kind of relational person are you? How has God wired you? In other words, of this people, procedure, passion, harmony, control, all those things that we've looked at, which circle is dominant in you? Which one of those would you identify as the dominant one? Which one of those three? Which one has the smallest value? See, one of them you do intuitively. You just do it. That's who you are. The other one, the one that's smallest, you got to think about a lot, especially if you're relating. And I'm guessing that most of you are married to someone who's opposite than you, so they're wired different than what you're going to put in. And yet that overlapping circle, that's where relationships are going to relate or collide. See, knowing your natural relational focus could go a long way to not being hurt in relational interactions with people who are different, like my dad was. Why? Because you don't take it personally. You understand where they're coming from. In the same way, it could go, understanding these things, to go a long way in being wise and not unintentionally hurting those who are different from you but share your life with you. This is important. I'm praying that God would be pleased to use all of us this week and beyond in our own unique way. We're always told at the end of the day that we're going to go be the church and the community around us. As his church, we're there to spread the truth to a world, as his messenger, a world that's hopeless. They don't have truth. As his minister, we're there to share his love with a world that is hurting. And if we do that strategically and wisely with the people who are in our lives, as well as the people that we are trying to embrace in life, then God is going to be able to get a clear picture. They're going to see a clear picture of what Jesus is all about. They're going to understand the reality of what Jesus spoke to when he said, "You're my witnesses. You are my hands and feet. You are my voice." If we don't, then we're going to go about our merry way, but we are not going to be leveraging our finite time in the best possible way. And you know what? That limited time is so precious. None of us want to waste it. We don't want to just spend it. We want to invest it in things that have eternal value. So, I trust this helps. I'll ask one last question. You got it? Okay, let's pray. Father, thank you for this time we've had together. I pray, Lord, that you will help us each one have a better understanding of ourselves, that you will use these verses just kind of out of the blue there that come to us with so much insight that we can develop some understanding and strategies of how to get along with each other, how to bridge those conversations, how to bridge those misunderstandings that we have within our own homes, and help the people in our life understand these things as well so that we can live in harmony in our homes. We can be efficient in how we live our lives, and we can take the risks that you want us to take out of love for the people that are in our lives. We pray, Father, that you'll guide us in Christ's name. Amen.